Welcome back, Wonders. It's Naidra. So I'm seeing a lot of confusion and questions out there in regards to the trials of Sekhemas. I figured I'd make a video to break it down for you guys in hopes to simplify it and also make it super quick and easy for you guys to get through. It is something that's a little bit more confusing on the surface if this is something that you've never done before. It certainly was for me. However, once you kind of go through it and you understand the mechanics, it really does make it super easy. And like I mentioned, it shouldn't take too long for you to get through this as long as you understand those basic fundamental mechanics. And so let's go ahead and take a look at those things together. One of the first things you're going to be faced with when you enter the trial of Sekhemas is going to be the relic altar. This relic altar will require a relic that you should have already obtained by this point in order to begin the trial. The lowest level relic that you should be able to find would be level 22, although I don't recommend doing this until you get closer to level 26 or 27, as that's going to provide you with a little bit more damage output, making this trial a little bit easier. Another thing you'll notice as you're opening up the trial is you'll be given access to your relic locker. Your relic locker will allow you to take relics that you have stored here, and this will give you buffs such as increased honor. You may get reduced damage from bosses. There's plenty of different ones that you can choose from, but these ultimately will all help you progress through the trials a little bit quicker and also potentially make it a little bit less risky for you. And so if you have these relics as you're beginning the trials, I would always recommend putting these in so that you can give yourself a little bit of a buff and make it slightly less difficult. Once you've entered the trials, you will need to be aware of a couple of different things that are happening. First of all, there will be traps and monsters in the trial, so you got to make sure that you're not getting hit. Each one of the hits that you take will do damage not only to you, but also will take away your honor points. And if you lose all of your honor points, you will automatically be kicked out of the trial and you'll have to start all over again. The traps that you're going to be facing are relatively easy to avoid. You just have to pay attention to them. For example, for this one, we have the spikes that are coming up out of the ground, and these ones are super easy to avoid. You'll just have to pay attention to the rumbling that's happening on the ground. The rumbling indicates that the spikes are about to come up, and if they do, they will hit you, which will take a chunk of your honor points. The other traps you may notice as you're going through the trial is there will be flamethrowers that are spinning around, and those flamethrowers will also take a chunk of your honor points if you get hit. But if you time it just right, you can go right in between the flamethrowers as to not get hit and be able to get out just in time and not take away from any of those honor points once again. Once you've completed the first area, then you will notice another altar will appear in the next room, and this altar will have a trial map on it. Once you open up that trial map, it'll give you some additional options you can choose from. Each one of these options will give you a buff, and some of those will give you a buff and will also give you a debuff. So you have to be careful which one you're selecting. If you're unsure which one to select, my recommendation is to try to stay in the middle as much as possible. The middle one will typically give you additional options to select from. For example, if I were to select the bottom option on this map here, then I will have 3 different places I can go to from there, which is great. However, once I complete that one and go on to the next room, if I were to select the bottom one again, it would only allow me with one option to choose from after I've completed that room, which may not necessarily be the option you want, and we want to try to have as many selections available as possible in order to be able to pick the correct buff and potentially the correct debuff. Be aware that the debuffs and the buffs that you get will last for the entirety of the trial, so if you pick up a debuff at the very beginning of the trial, that will stay with you all the way to the end. So be mindful when you are picking these, and especially try not to select the ones that reduce your movement speed. If I could give you any advice on how to get through these quick, it would be to make sure that A, you've got movement speed on your equipment already, and B, when you're picking the debuffs, do not select the ones that reduce your movement speed or hurt you too much to the point where it'll prevent you from completing the trial. Some of these options may also include keys like the bronze key or silver key or even the gold key. These keys will give you access to the loot room at the end of the trial, and you'll be able to get additional items depending on which keys you have, and those additional items may be class based or they may be just generic ones as well, but these keys are extremely important to collect, and these will be available to you not only from the trial map, but you may also find these from treasure chests as you go through the rooms, and they can also potentially drop from monsters as well. So definitely keep an eye out for these keys, as they can give you a lot more loot once you've completed the trial. Upon completing each one of these rooms, then you'll be eventually left with the boss room. Defeating the boss will allow you to go into the loot room. Not only will you be able to collect your ascendancy, but you'll also be able to choose from a few different loot options, which we'll take a look at the end of the video. The trials that you'll face in each room should be relatively easy to do. For example, there'll be a few different ones you can go through. Some of them may say you just need to defeat the enemies before the time runs out. Others may just require you to find the exit, which is super easy to do. But then you'll also run into some which will require you to disable the crystals before the time runs out. That one is also just as easy, but understanding where to look for the crystals makes it that much easier for you. And so you'll notice once you click on the crystal, it'll shoot out a beam of light. That beam of light is an indicator of where the next crystal is going to be. So as long as you head in the direction that that light shoots out, you'll be able to find the next one until you reach the end of that trial. Once you've completed all the rooms, then the last challenge you'll be left with will be the boss of the area. The boss himself should be pretty easy for you to take down, especially if you're a few levels higher than the recommended level of the relic. But you do want to make sure that you have as much honor as possible in order to complete this and to do it easily. Be aware of the amount of honor that you have, and if you're relatively low, try to aim for the buffs that give you additional honor by the time that you get to the boss. If you have less than half honor when you're facing against the boss at the end, you may want to be really careful and also make sure that you're not getting hit by any of the boss mechanics, as the damage that he's putting out is going to do quite a lot to you and will take away that honor. Losing all the honor once again will kick you out of the trial and you'll have to start it all over again, so you do need to be mindful of that. However, the boss is pretty slow, so you should be able to pretty easily dodge all of the mechanics he has to throw at you, and then once you've completed the boss, you'll be able to make your way over to the final room, which will be the loot room and also where you have the ability to claim your ascendancy. Once you've made your way over to the loot room, there are a couple of things that you need to pay attention to. The first thing, if you haven't done so already, is go over to the altar of ascendancy, where you'll be able to choose from a couple of different ascendancies depending on which character class you are. And then you'll also want to go over to the altar that allows you to convert your leftover sacred waters to keys. Each one of those keys will allow you to open one of these different loot boxes, which, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, will either be class-based or they may be generic. And so, for example, in this video, we've got the Bronze Mage's Cache, which can be opened with a bronze key. Now, there are a few different bronze caches that you can choose from, so I would recommend opening the one that's going to be best suited for you or for the build that you're working on. And then beyond that, you'll also notice that you'll have the silver caches, and then finally you'll have the gold caches. So like I mentioned, make sure you convert your leftover waters to keys so that you can open all of these caches. And then if you need additional space, there is a stash that you can utilize here in this room to put your stuff away before going back to town and selling your stuff or identifying your stuff. Lastly, you'll be able to talk to Balbala, the advisor, which will be able to give you additional relics so that you can have additional buffs you'll be able to use in future trials that you decide to take. With that being said, I hope this video was helpful and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below. That would greatly help me out. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, Wanderers.